Okay, so get this. Picture this. A fish just strolling down the street.
Wait, what?
Not swimming, but like actually walking.
Whoa, hold on.
It sounds like a bad sci-fi movie, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Or like a nature documentary.
With a serious plot twist.
Exactly. You'd be surprised how many fish have ditched the whole swimming thing
Traded their fins
and
in.
taken up walking on land.
Well, not quite feet.
Right.
More like, creative ways of getting around.
That's what we're diving into today.
Amphibious fish?
Amphibious fish, exactly.
Yeah.
We've got 2 articles to help us unpack this all.
I lay it all out.
One from Field and Stream introduces us to 6 different species of these land-loving fish.
6.
And another from Tree Hugger, which raises some,
Red
concerns
flags.
about a couple of them.
Yeah, specifically their potential to become invasive.
Invasive, right?
It's wild to think about their evolution.
Yeah.
How these adaptations for surviving out of water are
Right.
intertwined with these concerns about them spreading too far.
It's like a good news, bad news situation.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Okay, so most creatures that, made the leap from water to land way back when,
Millions of years ago.
they just stayed on land, right?
Pretty much.
But some fish were like, nah, we're doing both.
They wanted it all.
What's the evolutionary advantage there?
I mean, think about it. Being able to move between water and land
Yeah.
opens up a whole world of options.
Options for, what?
Well, escaping predators in the water, right?
Makes sense.
Finding new food sources on land.
Oh, okay.
Even unique places to lay their eggs, safe from other fish that might eat them.
All right.
It's all about maximizing their chances of survival.
Survival of the fittest.
And for these fish, that meant becoming masters of both worlds.
So it's more than just walking. It's about having a strategy.
Utilizing both environments to their advantage.
Okay, let's meet some of these amphibious all-stars.
Yeah.
Field and Stream starts us off with the mudskipper.
Mudskipper, love the name.
Literally skips across mudflats.
It's,
Their pectoral fins, they function like little legs, right?
yeah, propelling them across the mud.
But here's the crazy part. Mudskippers can actually drown
I know, right?
if they stay underwater too long.
Too long.
Wait, a fish that can drown?
It's ironic.
How is that even possible?
Well, basically, their adaptation to land has come at a cost.
Okay.
They've become so reliant on breathing air.
So they can't breathe air.
They actually breathe through their skin
Wow.
and the lining of their mouth and throat.
Okay.
Water is still crucial, but mainly to keep their gills moist.
Right.
So it's a trade-off.
So they're not really breathing underwater anymore.
No, not in the traditional sense.
Okay. And what about those bulging eyes? I remember reading about that.
Oh, yeah, those eyes are wild.
They kind of creep me out
They're like built-in binoculars. They can see above and below the water at the same time.
at the same time.
Yeah, perfect for hunting, both on land and in the water.
What do they eat?
Mostly insects. But, even though they've escaped those underwater predators, there are new threats waiting for them up on land.
Like what?
Birds, other animals.
Oh, of course.
Yeah.
Speaking of potential threats, let's talk about the northern snakehead.
Uh-oh.
The article calls it a monster fish.
Sounds a bit dramatic.
Yeah, kind of terrifying, honestly.
Well, they can breathe air.
Yeah.
They grow pretty big, up to 19 pounds.
9 pounds.
And they have, a bit of a menacing look about them.
But they do look scary.
Yeah, I guess so, but the whole monster thing might be a bit much.
Okay, so how do they move on land?
It's more of a slow crawl. They use their back fin and their head.
So less monster movie and more like,
Awkward teenager.
Exactly.
And here's the thing. They really only venture out of the water in extreme situations.
Like what?
Like if their pond dries up.
Oh, okay. But you mentioned earlier that some of these fish, they have the potential to become invasive.
Right.
Is the northern snakehead one of them?
It is.
And the tree hugger article, it specifically mentions concerns about them being in Australia.
Yeah, Australia seems to be a hot spot for these invasive fish.
Okay, so what's the problem with the northern snakehead in Australia?
Well, the problem is they're not from Australia.
Right.
They were introduced, and because they can survive out of water, even travel over land a bit,
Yeah.
they can easily spread to new areas.
So they really are fish out of water.
Literally and figuratively.
That's where the invasive label comes in, right?
Yep. It means they're not naturally part of the ecosystem.
Right.
And their presence can throw things out of whack.
Like how?
Well, potentially harming native species and messing with the whole environment.
So it's not that the northern snakehead is, inherently bad?
No, not necessarily.
It's more that it's in the wrong place?
Exactly. In its native habitat in Asia, it's part of a balanced system.
Okay.
But in Australia, where it doesn't have natural predators or competitors,
Yeah.
it can really cause some problems.
Like what kind of problem?
It can outcompete native fish for food,
Right.
even prey on them directly,
Oh, wow.
which can lead to a decline in those native fish populations.
Or even extinctions.
Yeah, potentially.
And that's a huge impact.
It is, and it's not just about the fish themselves,
What else?
Invasive species can bring in new diseases, parasites that the native species aren't equipped to handle.
Oh, that's a good point.
They can change the whole structure of the ecosystem.
Wow. Okay, so how did these fish even get to Australia?
That's the million-dollar question.
They can walk, but it's not like they just, walked across the ocean.
No, they definitely didn't swim that far.
So how do they get there?
Well, human actions are almost always behind the introduction of invasive species.
Really?
Sometimes it's accidental, like ships releasing ballast water.
Ballast water.
Yeah, it's water they carry for stability, but
Okay.
it can contain fish larvae,
Uh-huh.
and then they release it in a new port.
And boom, invasive species.
Exactly, but often it's intentional.
In-
People might release their aquarium fish into the wild.
Thinking they're doing the right thing.
Yeah, thinking they're giving the fish a better life, not realizing the consequences.
The road to hell is paved with good intentions, right?
Yeah, pretty much.
So we've got this fish that's adapted to survive out of water.
Right.
And that very adaptation is what makes it easier for it to spread to new environments and become a problem.
It's a tricky situation.
A double-edged sword.
Exactly.
And the northern snakehead isn't the only amphibious fish causing concern.
Right. The tree hugger article also mentions the climbing perch as a potential threat in Australia.
The climbing perch, we talked about their ability to survive out of water for a long time.
Hours, even longer if they bury themselves in mud.
Yeah, and those spiny fins.
Don't forget those.
So are they facing similar challenges as the snakehead in Australia?
They are. Similar challenges, yeah. They're also considered invasive there.
So they're not native to Australia either.
Nope, another transplant.
And they're spreading because of those crazy adaptations.
Adaptations that would normally help them thrive.
Right, like surviving out of water for a super long time.
Yeah, incredibly resilient.
And those spiny fins probably help them get around too, right?
Forget it. The spines aren't just for show.
They're not just for defense.
They help them wriggle and move forward on land.
It's not pretty, but it works.
Definitely not graceful, but effective.
And that ability to move even a little bit on land
Makes all the difference.
when it comes to getting to new waterways.
It's like they're hopping from pond to pond.
It's like the things that make them so successful in their natural habitat
Yeah.
are the same things that make them a problem when they end up somewhere else.
It's almost like a cruel joke.
It's fascinating, but also kind of scary.
It really highlights the whole interconnectedness of ecosystems.
And how messing with those connections can have consequences.
Exactly. Unintended consequences.
So we've talked about the northern snakehead. We've talked about the climbing perch.
Both causing trouble in Australia.
What about some of the other fish in the Field and Stream article?
Well, there's the Pacific leaping blenny.
Leaping blenny. The name sounds pretty self-explanatory.
They're basically jumping beans of the fish world.
They can jump?
They launch themselves into the air using their tails.
Like a spring?
Exactly. It's pretty amazing to see.
So why do they do that?
Well, they've actually gone fully terrestrial.
Fully terrestrial. They live on land all the time.
Pretty much. And the reason
Yeah.
to avoid those predators in the water.
So for them, land is safer.
It's their haven.
Makes sense. Okay, what else? What other fish?
There's the walking catfish.
Walking catfish? I think I've heard of these.
They're kind of notorious.
Why is that?
Well, they've been known to show up in some unexpected places.
Like where?
Walmart parking lots.
Wait, what
So-
fish? In a Walmart parking lot?
They're not exactly stocking the shelves.
Okay, how did they get there?
Well, they can walk,
We know that.
but they also use storm drains.
Like little fish highways.
Exactly. It gives them access to all sorts of places.
So are they dangerous?
Not really. More of a nuisance than a threat.
Okay, good to know. Any other walking fish we should talk about?
We can't forget the mangrove rivulus.
Mangrove rivulus, that's a mouthful.
It is, but their story is even more mind-blowing.
Okay, tell me more.
They can self-fertilize.
Self-fertilize.
Yep, they don't need a partner to reproduce.
Wow, that's incredible.
And get this, they can survive out of water for over 2 months.
2 months.
Yeah,
Crazy, right?
they even hang out.
They like to chill in rotting logs.
Rotting logs, that's cozy.
It works for them.
And how do they move around?
The article describes it as launches, squiggles, and pounces.
Launches, squiggles, and pounces.
Pretty accurate.
It sounds like a dance move.
Maybe we should try it out.
The mangrove rigulus dance.
I like it. Yeah, they're not messing around, those mangrove rivulets.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here about these walking fish.
From mudskippers to snakeheads to catfish in parking lots. It's amazing how diverse they are.
It really is. They've adapted to all sorts of environments.
And it makes you wonder, what other strange and wonderful creatures are out there?
There's definitely more to discover. Nature is full of surprises.
Absolutely. To our listeners, keep exploring, and you never know what you might find.